This is the story of one of the most shocking scandals of the 21st century, a story of wealth, power, exploitation, and unanswered questions. This is the rise and fall of Jeffrey Epstein, and what we still don't fully understand. Let's begin from the start. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in 1953 and built his reputation as a financier with elite connections. By the 1990s, he was known in circles of powerful businesspeople and politicians, cultivating relationships that would later complicate investigations into his crimes. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Epstein began facing serious accusations from dozens of girls, some as young as 14, involving sexual misconduct and abuse. But in 2008, rather than face a federal trial, Epstein struck a controversial plea deal with prosecutors. Pleaded guilty to state prostitution charges. Served roughly 13 months with work release. Protected from federal prosecution. This deal was later condemned as a massive miscarriage of justice, a deal that shielded Epstein and potentially others from deeper scrutiny. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time on federal charges of sex trafficking minors, alleging he and accomplices had recruited dozens of underage girls across state lines. He was denied bail, and prosecutors signaled they were preparing a major case. But on August 10, 2019, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. Officials ruled it a suicide, a conclusion that sparked intense controversy and conspiracy theories, in part because of glaring lapses in jail protocols and surveillance. Ghislaine Maxwell, a British socialite and longtime associate, was arrested in 2020. Prosecutors allege she helped Epstein recruit and groom girls for abuse. In 2021, a federal jury convicted her of sex trafficking and conspiracy charges, and in 2022 she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. For decades, the full scope of investigation materials, emails, flight logs, affidavits, photos, videos, and court filings remained sealed. But in 2025, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, requiring the U.S. Department of Justice to release all unclassified Epstein-related documents to the public. The initial deadline was December 19, 2025, but the Justice Department released only a portion of the files, drawing bipartisan criticism. In December and January, batches of documents were released, with tens of thousands of pages, photos, and other materials. But lawmakers, survivors, and advocates said the releases were incomplete, heavily redacted, and difficult to navigate. On January 30, 2026, the DOJ published its largest release yet, over 3.5 million pages, including about 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. But problems quickly emerged. At least 43 victims' names were left unredacted, exposing their identities and prompting calls from attorneys to pull or re-review the files. Survivors denounced the releases as re-traumatizing and incomplete, especially because many notes and materials remain withheld or blacked out. It's important to stress this. Being mentioned in the Epstein files or flight logs does not mean someone has been accused or charged with a crime. However, the released materials show an extensive web of contacts involving politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and tech elites. Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, Prince Andrew, Richard Branson. Not accusations, referenced in released files. These references range from emails and texts to meeting schedules. Still, none imply guilt, but they demonstrate how far Epstein's reach extended socially and professionally. Newly released estate documents show Epstein planned to leave his $630 million fortune to 43 individuals, including his girlfriend, Karina Shuliak, and even Maxwell, though many potential heirs have since renounced claims. Victims have already received more than $125 million in settlements, but legal battles continue. Even now in 2026, the Epstein story is far from closed. Lawmakers continue to demand further releases, better redactions, and accountability for anyone who enabled or ignored Epstein's abuses. Survivors and advocates are pushing for independent oversight of the file review process, while legal experts continue to analyze the millions of pages already public. The Jeffrey Epstein case spans decades of allegations, failures, power networks, and unanswered questions. What we know is the suffering of survivors, the controversy of legal deals, and a still evolving effort to understand how a man with so much influence evaded accountability for so long. And while parts of his story are now public, the search for justice and full transparency continues. Subscribe for updates and join the conversation respectfully.